Imagine a world where one single question could challenge everything you know. Over 2,000 years ago, a man named Socrates did just that, and he didn't even write anything down. This guy wasn't a politician, a scientist, or even a teacher by trade. He was just someone who questioned everything, and it changed the world forever. So who was Socrates really? A hero of thought? A rebellious troublemaker? Or maybe something in between? What's clear is that he shook Athens to its core with ideas that were as disruptive as they were brilliant. In this video, we're going deep into the life of Socrates, the ultimate question-asker whose unique approach to conversation pushed people to think in ways they'd never dared before. If you've ever heard that it's good to question everything or to think for yourself, that's all thanks to him. But here's the big question. What was his secret? How did he turn ordinary chats into legendary lessons on life? And why did his fellow Athenians ultimately find him so dangerous? Stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll not only know who Socrates was, you'll be thinking a little more like him too. Early life and context. All right, let's rewind to ancient Greece, a time of powerful city-states, bustling marketplaces, and ideas flying around faster than a scroll can be unrolled. Athens was the beating heart of it all. Art, science, philosophy. They weren't just hobbies here. They were at the core of Athenian life. But for Socrates, philosophy wasn't something you read about in a book. It was something you lived, something that happened on the streets, in conversations with anyone willing to engage. Socrates was born around 470 BCE in a humble Athenian family. Unlike the aristocrats and scholars who usually dominate history, Socrates' father was a stonemason and his mother was a midwife. They didn't have much, but young Socrates had a naturally curious mind and fierce independence. He didn't get a fancy education or wear impressive titles. He was an ordinary kid from the lower class, yet he would grow up to become one of the most extraordinary thinkers in history, proving that wisdom doesn't come from privilege. Athens back then was a hotbed for ideas. Philosophers like Anaxagoras were probing the nature of reality, and traveling sophists were making a living teaching people the art of persuasion. These sophists claimed to know everything, but to Socrates they were more interested in winning arguments than finding truth. In his eyes, their methods weren't about knowledge, they were about looking smart, and that didn't sit well with him. Socrates didn't care about riches or fame. He was after a different kind of wealth, the wealth that comes from understanding life itself. So he took his questions to the streets, challenging Athenians to rethink everything they assumed was true. For Socrates, every conversation was a path to wisdom, every question a door to new understanding. In a world obsessed with status and reputation, he stood out. Socrates wasn't in it for glory, he was in it for truth, and that made him a force to be reckoned with, the Socratic method. Now, what made Socrates so unique wasn't just what he thought, but how he thought. You see, Socrates developed a revolutionary way of thinking called the Socratic method, a technique so powerful it's still used in schools, courts, and debates around the world today. His method was all about uncovering truth through relentless questioning rather than just accepting what you were told. So, how does it work? Imagine this. Instead of telling someone his opinion, Socrates would ask a question, then another and another, drilling down until he got to the very core of the issue. Each question would open up a new way of thinking, a new layer to explore. To Socrates, knowledge wasn't about memorizing facts, it was about asking the right questions, and he believed that every answer you gave was just the beginning of the next question. Picture this. You might say, happiness is about having a lot of money. Instead of agreeing or disagreeing, Socrates would hit back with, what is happiness? Is it something you can measure? And if it's really about money, then why do so many wealthy people feel unfulfilled? Before you know it, he's got you questioning not just happiness, but your entire approach to life. This might sound simple, but it was groundbreaking in a world where knowledge was seen as something handed down by the gods, authorities, or tradition. Socrates showed that real understanding was personal, earned through rigorous self-examination. By questioning everything, even things people took for granted, Socrates was teaching people to break free from blind beliefs, to truly think for themselves. But here's the kicker. This method didn't just make people think, it made them uncomfortable. Socrates' constant questioning exposed ignorance, especially among those who thought they knew everything. It was like holding up a mirror, forcing people to confront the gaps in their own understanding. And in a place like Athens, where pride and reputation were everything, this didn't exactly make him popular. People began seeing Socrates as a threat to traditional beliefs, even to societal order itself. The trial of Socrates. All right, so Socrates' relentless questioning wasn't exactly winning him friends in high places. By challenging traditional beliefs and exposing gaps in people's understanding, he was seen as a disruptive force, even a public nuisance. And Athens? Well, it had just gone through a rough patch, a war, political turmoil, and a general need to maintain order. Socrates' constant probing was rocking the boat, and the authorities had had enough. In 399 BCE, Socrates was brought to trial on two main charges: corrupting the youth of Athens and not believing in the city's gods. To us, these might sound strange, but back then, they were serious accusations. Teaching young people to question authority and the gods was seen as destabilizing the very foundations of society. Now Socrates could have played it safe. He could have apologized, laid low, maybe even gone into exile. But no, Socrates stood his ground. In his defense speech, which his student Plato later recorded, Socrates argued that he was actually doing a service to Athens. He described himself as a gadfly, a pesky insect buzzing around, keeping the city from falling into complacency. His job, as he saw it, was to provoke people to think deeply and to challenge easy assumptions. One of his most famous quotes from this trial was, "The unexamined life is not worth living." To Socrates, a life without self-reflection was empty. This wasn't just a catchy phrase, it was his philosophy in a nutshell, and his defense wasn't about saving his own skin, it was about defending the right to question, to seek truth, even if it made people uncomfortable. But the jury wasn't impressed. In fact, they found him guilty. And when given the chance to suggest his own punishment, Socrates, true to form, suggested that he be rewarded with free meals for life as a public benefactor. It's like he was daring the jury to stand by their decision. But in the end, they sentenced him to death by drinking hemlock, a poisonous plant. Socrates could have escaped. His friends even tried to arrange it. But he chose to stay, choosing to respect the law of Athens, even if it meant his own death. His final act was a lesson in itself, a commitment to his beliefs and to the pursuit of truth, no matter the cost. Socrates' trial and death became one of the most profound statements in history, challenging us to consider what it truly means to live with integrity, legacy, and impact on philosophy. Socrates may have been gone, but his ideas were just getting started. Through his students, especially Plato, Socrates' teachings found a new life. Plato documented many of Socrates' conversations and ideas, preserving them for future generations and building an entire philosophical tradition around them. The Socratic method became a foundation for critical thinking, influencing everyone from philosophers to scientists, educators, and lawyers. It wasn't just a way of arguing, it was a way of thinking that valued open inquiry and the relentless pursuit of truth. Because of Socrates, Western philosophy took a sharp turn towards the idea that knowledge comes from questioning, not just accepting tradition or authority. Today, Socrates' influence can be seen everywhere, from the way we conduct scientific research to the value we place on freedom of thought. Socrates taught us that true wisdom isn't about knowing all the answers. It's about having the courage to keep asking questions, even if they make people uncomfortable. Socrates showed us that the journey to knowledge is never-ending. So the next time you question something, no matter how small, you're following in the footsteps of one of history's greatest thinkers. If you enjoyed exploring Socrates' story, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more content that makes you think deeply about the world around you. Keep questioning and stay curious.